We're going to sit. Is that cool with you guys?
That's cool.
Yeah, this is going to be good. Yeah. Yeah, so true.
Just don't want to get ran over by Chris pacing across the stage. Gotta keep it under control a little bit.
I might.
We'll be a little closer to you, though.
Yeah, you can sit by me. I'm not. Yeah. This is good. We haven't done this. This is probably last year we did it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's been a while.
Yeah. It's been a while. Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
I had longer hair. Yeah, I had hair.
He had hair.
See what my wife did to me?
Oh,
I used to have hair, and now it's all gone, and it is what it is.
Ugh.
Here we go.
I like it. I like it.
Where do you want to start, baby?
Well,
Let's rock and roll. I'll let you.
for those of you guys who were not here last week, we just started a new series. We're calling it Love God and Love Others. The whole series, it's a 4-week series. It's based off of Matthew 22, verse 37, where the religious experts asked Jesus, they said, what of all the commandments, which are the most important ones? And Jesus replied to them, and he said, the first and greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, and with all of your mind. And there's a second one that is equally as important. And that one says to love your neighbor as yourself. And it says that the entire law is based off of these two commands. So basically, Jesus is telling us right there, the two most important things you can do in this life are to love God and to love others. And in that, he says that loving your neighbor is equally as important as loving God, which I think is huge. If that doesn't tell you that loving the people around you is what you got to do in this life, I don't know what else does. With that being said, last week we talked about loving others, like other people outside of your family. We talked about in Philippians 2, Paul talks to us about how to love each other and what that looks like. I'm going to pull that up real quick. And in Philippians 2, he tells us it says, don't push your way to the front. Don't sweet talk your way to the top. Put yourself aside. Help others get ahead. Don't be obsessed with getting your own advantage. Forget yourselves long enough to lend a helping hand. Think of yourselves the way Christ Jesus thought of himself. He had equal status with God and didn't think so much of himself that he had to cling to the advantages of that status no matter what. When the time came, he set aside his privileges and deity and took on the status of a slave, becoming human. So he tells us exactly what we got to do. He's telling us love others, and in order to do that, be humble. You need to be humble. You need to put aside all forms of self-righteousness and selfishness, and you need to put others above yourself. He doesn't say, love your neighbor if. He just says love your neighbor. It's not if they look the same as you, act the same as you, any of those things. Just love your neighbor, and that's it. So you got to be humble, and you got to be selfless. This week, we're talking about our marriage relationship. And surprisingly, it's not that different, right?
No.
You still got to be humble, and you still got to be selfless.
So true.
And it's kind of hard.
So true. You got it pretty easy, though.
I don't know. For those of you who knows, who has a hard time being humble in our relationship, do you think?
You mean our relationship?
And me and you, yeah. Chris or me?
Let's vote.
Who thinks Chris has a hard time being humble in our relationship?
Oh!
Okay.
Hey, just throw him under the bus.
No.
Throw him under the bus.
I'm kidding.
I thought
Actually,
I have friends.
it's funny because it's not true. Chris actually is always the first one to apologize. Surprising. I know you guys would be surprised. He's always the first one, or maybe the only one to apologize. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a hard time.
You know what?
I have a hard time.
So we'll do a sidebar note here.
Okay.
We've been married, what is it?
8 years.
Going on 8 years.
Almost 8 years,
Almost
yeah.
8 years. That's weird. I know, I kind of had to remember that. It feels like 25.
In a good way.
In a good way.
We've done a lot of things in 8
But
years.
I could probably count on one hand how many times she says, yeah, one hand. So there's only
Sorry, I was
5 fingers
wrong.
on this bad boy. But to say, I'm sorry, Chris, I was wrong. Forgive me. Right? It is one of those things. So I just accepted it, and so like it is what it is, and yeah.
It's not that I'm not sorry. I just don't know how to say it. Okay. Anyway, for those of you who don't know us, I'm Monica, and this is Chris. And if it's your first time here, we have been married for almost 8 years.
Yep.
We have 3 kids.
Yep.
We have a 14-year-old. Her name's Taylin. And we have our little guy is about to be 6. He was born on Valentine's Day. And he's a lover boy.
Oh, that's pretty amazing.
He's pretty sweet most of the time.
Yeah.
And then we've got a little 3-year-old girl that is crazy.
Yeah, savage. She's, ruthless. She's ruthless. Yeah.
Pray for her.
Yeah, pray for her.
She needs it.
Yeah.
No, she's amazing. She takes after Chris a lot in her attitude. She's not going to stop no matter what. That's a good thing. It's a good thing when you become an adult. It's just hard to rein it in as a 3-year-old.
To navigate it, yeah.
She'll get what she wants when she wants it, when she's older. She will never stop. She's determined.
Yeah. It's good. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to take the hits today,
no,
guys.
that's not a hit. You have determination.
No,
and discipline.
so
That's
true.
good.
So
That's
true.
good.
So I mean, today we are talking about marriage.
Yes.
We probably know what not to do. I would say that's probably what we're really good at. Yeah. And I think marriage it's such an amazing thing. We love marriage. We love everything about marriage. It's the greatest relationship here on earth. It's amazing, but there's also a lot of low times within it that you gotta work through. And I think it's a fairy tale. We oftentimes look at it.
Uh-oh.
Oh, this one's it died.
You're dead. Maybe that's a good thing. Oh, I thought mine died. Oh, no.
I wish it would have.
Oh, gosh.
I wish it would have. I wish it would have.
Oh, man.
But we get the opportunity to hang out with couples often who have been married on this journey a while. We actually just met with a good friend of ours on Friday night. They've been married, I want to say 21 years.
25 years.
25 years?
Yeah.
But I think there's so much to it, and we love it. We love the hardships of it because you know this, anything in life, not even just marriage, but if it's not hard, you better watch out because that's the factor of I got to go through this. And I know there's something over that mountain and God's going to take it away. Amen. And that's within marriage. And how many of you guys are single? We need to know this right now.
Hey, look around.
Look around.
Look around.
No.
Available.
Here's where we're gonna go. You're probably thinking, what's this got to do with me? I'm not married. We're a huge advocate for what are you doing today for your marriage tomorrow? Oftentimes young bucks don't even think that way. You guys got to understand, or even if you're older in this, it's what you're doing today affects your future spouse tomorrow. And what you do personally in your life today will affect you tomorrow. And so for us, the heartbeat of this, there's so many times where we have to walk through some hardships, but we know at the end result, we're better together to help others. That's all it is. That is it. That's all this life is about. What you're going through right now in this moment is for your future spouse and for others. Because our only job here, just like what she just read in Scripture, serve people. Serve them well. Because that's how you will eventually serve your spouse or serve your spouse today if you are married in it.
I think that goes with everything, even outside of marriage. Like if whatever you're doing today affects tomorrow. So whatever your goals are in life, like whatever you want your marriage to look like when you get married, you've got to start working on it now. You got to be the person that you want to be when the time comes. You got to work all the things out beforehand. So it's like when the time comes, you're ready and you're whole and you have something to actually offer. And you know what you want from the other person as well. I think that a lot of times we all jump into it and we don't have a lot of instruction on it. And it's a hard thing. And there's so many other things in life that we work on really hard and we prepare for really hard. And then when it comes to marriage, we just kind of are like, well, if it's meant to be, it'll work out. And that's just not the way it is. If you want an exceptional marriage, you have to make it be an exceptional marriage. It doesn't just happen. People don't just have amazing families. They don't just have amazing spouses and amazing relationships. They're amazing because they work on it and because they're working on themselves as well. We actually have instruction in the Bible too of what it's supposed to look like. So if you do have your Bible, we're going to have you turn to Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21. I'm going to read it out of the Message version because I like it. Sounds good. But whatever version you have is great. Whatever version of the Bible you have, as long as you read it, it's good. So Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21, it says, "Out of respect for Christ, be courteous and reverent to one another." That applies to all people and all relationships. That's about what we talked about last week. Just be courteous to one another. Yeah. Wives, understand and support your husbands in ways that show your support for Christ. The husband provides leadership to his wife in the way that Christ does to his church, not by domineering, but by cherishing. So just as the church submits to Christ as he exercises such leadership, wives should likewise submit to their husbands. Husbands, go all out in your love for your wives, exactly as Christ did for the church, a love marked by giving, not by getting. Christ's love makes the church whole. His words evoke her beauty. Everything he does and says is designed to bring the best out of her, dressing her in dazzling white silk, radiant with holiness. And that is how husbands ought to love their wives. They're really doing themselves a favor, since they're already one in marriage. No one abuses his own body, does he? No, he feeds it and pampers it. That's how Christ treats us, the church, since we are part of his body. And this is why a man leaves father and mother and cherishes his wife. No longer two, they become one flesh. This is a huge mystery, and I don't pretend to understand it all. What is clearest to me is the way that Christ treats the church. And this provides a good picture of how each husband is to treat his wife, loving himself and loving her, and how each wife is to honor her husband. That end part where it says that what is clearest to me is the way that Christ treats his church, because that's what our picture is of how we're supposed to treat each other. It's the way that Christ treats his church. And if you remember from last week, we did talk about, and in that verse I read a little bit ago, we talk about how Jesus died for his church. He put himself completely aside. He took all of his privileges as God, and he put them aside so that he could come here and be a human and live among us and die for us. He did it very humbly. So if Jesus treats his church in such a humble and sacrificial way, that's how we're supposed to treat our spouse as well. And that's way easier said than done. I think that being humble and sacrificial is hard. We kind of broke it up into two categories here for you guys today because, so that's the picture of what the Bible says it's supposed to look like. But we want to give you guys just tangible, practical advice on what that looks like in real life to the best that we can. Like we said, we don't have it all figured out. We work on it every day, and we will till the day we die. But we have had a lot of different people in our lives. We've read a lot of books. We try to do everything that we can do to absorb as much as we can, that we can pass it along to you guys. And these are the things that have worked for us. And that with anything that you ever go to in this realm, you have to figure out what works for you. It's not all black and white, and it doesn't work for everybody. But these are the things that we have done that have made a huge difference in our lives, in our marriage, and in our relationship with God as well. So the first one would be make marriage your priority.
Y'all could write that down too. That's good. Yeah. That's good. Or if you got a good memory, just remember that.
Yeah. So the first thing, making your marriage your priority.
I think it's interesting when you make something a priority, you just care so much about it, Right, that's the main thing. If you make it a priority, you're gonna do everything to get to that spot of where you're going, and that's ultimately what a priority is. If you set a priority to the side, you're not gonna achieve where you're going down the road. That's what priorities is. You can look at it as even like your calendar. I think so often our calendar, we line it up all the time because it shows what's a priority to us first and foremost, and then also to our kids. And then also after that, the relationships around us. And so we've just made it a priority that if we are good, if we're gonna always talk, what does this look like? How do we make it a priority? And I think a simple one is for us, for about probably 4 or 5 years, every Thursday night we have date night. Every Thursday night. Like nothing gets in the way, not even you
Never
guys.
missed.
Right.
Never
Yeah.
missed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably actually since before Hudson was born, we've started, and he's about to be 6. So yeah, we've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, and it's so healthy because for us, you would look at it as, well, we're missing out on our kids, and it's like, yeah, right. They're with us all the time. They probably want to get rid of us, get away from us. But the emphasis is this. It's not that they say mommy and daddy every Thursday night. They know it's date night. Mm-hmm. They know that dad is taking his beautiful wife, their mother, on a date. And it's a twofold, because if we're not good, guess what? Your kids ain't gonna be good. And if I'm not showing Hudson, hey, this is what you do with your wife. You take her out every single week, and it looks different for all of us. It could be once a month, whatever it is. But for them, they get to see, like, no, this is a healthy marriage. They go out on a date to learn about each other. That's what we do, because and oftentimes about once a month we're yelling at each other in that date. You know, it is what it is. We're hashing it out, and there's something to it, because whatever the frustration was, we had this time to be intimate with each other on a level where we're actually talking about stuff that matters. Because oftentimes, I would say even in marriage, y'all ain't talking about nothing that's important. And so that's why we have this space, because during the week, there's a lot of times we ain't talking about nothing important. It's like, yo, you got to go get the kids. Okay, I'll go get the kids. You know, that kind of stuff, the logistics side of it. But when you make it a priority, this has been such a huge thing for us. I'll tell you, the one night I look forward to, other than Sundays, because I love Sundays, is Thursday nights. It's funny, because Monday comes around, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait for Thursday night. I can't wait for Thursday night. Because we've made it a priority that our marriage is going to last. Nothing's going to get between us, not even things of this world that can easily alter our way of thinking and perspective. We've shut that out big time.
I think when it comes down to it, this is the person that you have to sleep next to every night, and they're gonna be
She's
there.
lucky.
I'm so lucky.
She's lucky.
So lucky. And we have to share our house every single day, and we are sharing everything about our lives every day. So when it comes down to priorities, it comes down to choices. And so at the end of the day, I'm gonna choose him every time, because he's gonna be there when my kids move out. He's gonna be there till the day that I die, or he does, whichever one goes first. And so the thing is, I know, I've thought about it. When it comes down to it, you have to make a choice every single day, and every single choice that you make every day is going to affect that person. It's going to affect your day. It's going to affect your marriage, for good or for bad. You make good choices, you make bad choices. It's all going to affect what you eat for lunch that day. That affects your marriage. Every single thing. It's always having the other person in mind. Are they going to make dinner tonight? Should I be hungry when they do? Or am I, things like that, where it's like you're not even thinking that it's a big deal, but these things, like just knowing that there's always somebody else there, every single thing that you do matters. And putting that date night on the calendar, that's a choice. When it's a priority, those are the things you do first. So when we fill out our calendar for the month, date night goes on there every single Thursday. Our relationships with other people, we put our crew night every Wednesday. Those 2 things are on there. Sundays are on there. Those are the things that are priorities in our life. Yep. And then the rest gets filled in later. We don't put everything else in there and say, if there's time, we'll go out on Thursday night. Like, that's the number one thing that gets put on our calendar.
I'll say, even to that, if there's time, that's kind of an interesting thing, because you won't have time for it.
No.
Like,
It'll
that's why
never
the
happen.
calendar is so amazing, because you won't have time for it. You know that. It's like everything you get caught up quickly. And that's why, even with Jesus, when you look at his life, like, he knew where he was going. He always knew where he was going. He knew who his Father was, he knew who he was, and he knew where he was going. And our lives should resemble that. If you want to be a good husband, guess what? Go learn to be a good husband. If you want to be a good wife, go learn. Go get counseling. Go get help. Whatever that looks like. I think so often we just settle with being okay, not living up to, how do I say it? Not even the standard, but up to your potential of who you are and who he's created you to be. I think so many of us are living under that, especially when it comes to a marriage, or even individually expectant that God's going to give you a wife or a husband down the road. But today, I think it's those choices are huge.
And so often, like, so many of our choices that we make in marriage, it's like we think that the goal is to be comfortable. The goal is to get into a good stride or whatever. So where it's like, I know what to expect every single day, and it'll be really comfortable, and we'll just know each other, and we won't even have to do anything. And that's not the goal. It's not the goal for marriage. It's not the goal for anything in life. Should not be comfort. I think that when you get comfortable, that's when things get dangerous. That's when, comfort, Chris always says, is an illusion. It's not a real thing. If you feel uncomfortable and you're feeling good about that, like, be careful, because the discomfort's right around the corner. That's when things start to fall apart. If you're not moving forward and you're not growing, then you're dying. There's no standing still. You have to be continually moving forward. You have to be failing and struggling in order to grow. First of all, there's no growth in comfort. Growth comes from the struggle. When you go to the gym, nothing happens unless it hurts a little, right? Like, a butterfly cannot gain its wings without struggling to get out of the cocoon. You have got to struggle a little bit in order to grow at all. If comfort is your goal and you're comfortable every single day, and you're just kind of going through the days, nothing's happening. You're not getting any better. You're not getting any bigger. You're not getting more to that goal of being exceptional anymore. You're just kind of not standing still. You're moving backwards. You're falling further away from your goal rather than getting closer to it. And I think that part of that growth and not moving towards comfort is even just like the maintenance. Like, we don't really want to put in the work. If you ask any other, like, even for mostly, I would say for men, a lot of the times, it's if you're wanting to excel in any area of life, you want to get, this certain job or interview, or you want to work your way up the ladder, or anything else, or if you want to get healthy, like, we're willing to go all in, we're willing to do all the research, we're willing to be trained, get a mentor, do all these things, but then when it comes to marriage, we just expect it to happen, and we're not willing to put in the work of it. And that kind of boils down to yourself as well, which is our second point. So you need to make marriage a priority, and then the second thing would be that you need to make yourself a priority. Got it right there, baby. And that sounds kind of weird. It sounds kind of counterproductive to what I said earlier, because it's not about putting yourself on a pedestal. It's not about putting yourself above your spouse. When I say make yourself a priority, I'm talking about fill yourself up and quit expecting your spouse to fill you up for you. You need to have your relationship with God at the forefront. You need to have your health taken care of for yourself. You need to have your joy and happiness and all those things. You need to be full on your own. You've got to take care of yourself so that your spouse doesn't feel the burden of having to do that for you. And the better you take care of yourself, the more you have to offer. And likewise for them. The more you take care of yourself, the more they're going to want to take care of themselves. It's not your job to always try to control their situations and to put them in their place or to nag them all day and all night about what you want them to be. You just need to work on yourself, because there's often that mirror effect. If I'm making myself better and I'm working on myself, chances are they're going to follow. And when that happens, you kind of grow closer to each other. You have more confidence in yourself. You have more energy. You have, you're just full, and that overflows. And when you can be full and you can have energy, you're going to want to have fun with your spouse. You're going to want to be friends with them. You're going to want to go out and do things. You might want to make out with them more often. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Which
where
is
we're
a
getting
good
at
thing.
next, right? That's
Yeah.
it. That's it. It's so true. And I want to go back to, even if you're single right now, like, this is huge. Like, I hear it over and over again, especially like single people. I just want to be married. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, the reality is, it's like, do you know what it's about? Like, because you have the most amount of time right now if you're single. What are you doing with it now? And I always say that because it's like, we want to be full of peace and joy, but we actually think that's in a human. We think that's in, if I was with somebody, I would have peace and joy. That is a lie. That is not the truth. That is not what Monica is talking about. Being full, being filled, that comes from Jesus and Jesus alone. And when that's going, just watch and see what he does when he brings people in your path. I think so often we hesitate with that because it's like we're so focused on, if I'm better here, I'll get this, right? And oftentimes it's, I just want a spouse or a significant other. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But what are you doing today for your spouse? Like I kind of said earlier. That joy, that peace. I remember before we even got married, we were talking, we had some good conversations, but it was like, hey, I can't make you happy. Like, I'm not going to bring you joy. I will let you down. I am human. I am flawed. I am broken. But here's what I can do. I will work on myself and elevate you. I will always lift you up. And I think that's where it always goes back to, where's your soul? And where are you with Jesus in this? Because it's just like what Monica said. What are we doing? And I think over and over again, we are always trying to grow. I would say even day by day, how can we improve? Go get counseling. Let's do it. What are we listening to? What books are we reading? I mean, because you always want to be a learner, and that's where growth happens. I like how you even said it. It's like, we actually think it just, oh, we got a good marriage. Like,
Or people will assume
what?
you have a good marriage because you have a great husband or you have a great wife. Like, not everybody gets so lucky to have such a, things
yeah.
like that. And it's like, no, like, he's really not that great, you know? No, he is great. But he works on it every day. Like,
Yeah.
the greatest thing that I always say is my favorite thing about him is he wants to be better every day. He wants to learn. Like, there are so many people, I think that's the biggest difference, is just that he has the desire to want to be better every day. And so many people are resistant to that. They just say, this is how I am. Either you like me or you don't, sorry. And that just doesn't work when you have two people trying to share a life together. You have got to have that desire to want to learn, to want to be better, and to want to push the other person towards that as well. There's another verse that says that Jesus came here to serve, not to be served. So if Jesus came here to serve, then what are we doing here? Like, and how are you expecting to serve your spouse if you are completely empty yourself? There can't be a one-sided thing. I think a lot of times in society we're taught one of two ways. And I think that both of us learned both of these things, and then we came together thinking it was going to work out. Was kind of crazy because Chris grew up kind of in a Mennonite background where men were like when you get together and eat, all the men ate first and stuff like that. Was kind of weird. Like, and the women would make the food, and then the men would eat, and then the women and children would go next. I don't know, kind of strange. And for me, it was more like, no, like a man is supposed to treat his wife like a princess kind of thing. Like, they're there to serve you. And so we're both kind of came into this expecting to be served by each other. And so
We
the
failed.
first year
We
was a
failed.
little rough.
Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough.
But we've come to like
Yeah.
figure out like that there's, I mean, good in both of those things, because instead of we had the attitude of what can I get instead of what can I give. And when we kind of both adjusted that a little bit, it made life a lot better and sweeter. And your expectations kind of changed at that point. Because I'm not giving him something and expecting something in return. I'm just trying to do what I can do to feel good about our relationship myself, to know that I did the right thing, to know that I'm just trying to make his day a little bit better, not because I want him to do something for me or because I want him to think of me in any certain way. It's just, what can I do to make your life easier? Because that's what God called us to do for everybody in our life, not just our spouse, but especially our spouse. We're on the same team, and in order to get ahead, we've got to work for each other and towards each other and towards the same goals. So I think when you communicate and you know what the expectation is, and you can fill yourself up, that's when you can truly kind of start to give to your spouse. Also, I mean, this shouldn't be the last thing that we talk about. It should have been the first thing, but I'm going to be the last thing because it'll be the thing you remember. Your relationship with God.
That's right.
There's so many times, like, we've read all these books and gone to all these conferences and things, and they always use this like little triangle thing, which is kind of cheesy, but it's true. And it works because you can visualize it. But they always say God is at the top of the triangle, and you and your spouse are at the bottom. And the closer you get to God, the closer you get to each other. You kind of start here and you work your way up. And you're closer to God, you're going to be closer to each other. If you don't know who God is, you don't know who Jesus is, and your spouse does, you can't know each other. Like, that's where the true intimacy comes from, because you guys are serving the same God, you have the same goals in life, and the ultimate goal of marriage is just to be better together and to reach more people than you could by yourself.
That's it, in a nutshell right there. I mean, that's why ultimately we get married. I mean, she could reach people I can't. I could reach people she can't. That's the goal. At the end of the day, that's the only reason to get married, to advance the kingdom. That's it. And I say it over and over again, even to people who want to get married. It's like, why do you want to get married? You know, it's like, is that the goal? Or what is the goal? What are you looking for in a spouse and in this relationship? I think that's the end goal, and that's always been our goal since day one, and we're not going to stop. And everything else is, comes and goes. I think so often you got to let things go. Like, things within your life that you think are a priority, it's like, if it's not a priority for her, I'm gonna let it go. Like, you just gotta let things go and get to know each other better. And the biggest thing within all of that is communication. You mentioned it earlier, but it is so key. Talk about everything. Like, even if you're like afraid to talk to your spouse about it, like, oftentimes we get so defensive, and all that is because you want to be right. That's what defensiveness is. At the end of the day, you get defensive, and I do it often because I want to be right. I don't want her to be right, like, at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. But what does that do? That does nothing, and we are on the same team and always communicating. I think that's it.
Yeah, you just have to know what your goals are.
Should we talk about sex?
No, it's 12:15.
12:15? Oh,
go.
that would be an hour long. Come next time.
No.
Come next time. We'll talk about sex.
Realistically, there are so many things like that we can't even hit on today, but we could talk about marriage for probably 6 months in a row, because there's so much to it. It's one of the most beautiful relationships there is in this world. It is something that Jesus compares himself and his relationship with the church to, and that should just show you how beautiful and important and amazing that it can be, if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to do it for the right reasons, and if you're willing to be humble as Jesus was in it, and you're willing to just treat others better than you treat yourself, because that's all that he's called us to do. He's called us to love God, and he's called us to love others. He says love your neighbor as yourself, and your spouse is your closest neighbor that you have. So I think that you love God, you love others, and be humble, be selfless. It's hard to do, but it's what we're called to do.
I love you. You're amazing.
I love you too.
You want me to pray?
Sure.
I think they're getting antsy.
Hey, I'm gonna say one more thing.
Hey, go ahead.
Nick is getting baptized today.
Yeah. Right after this,
Yeah.
go get your kids.
Yes. And if anybody else wants to get baptized, we're
Yeah.
gonna be in the water. So there's a hot tub. If you're afraid of the cold, there's a hot tub, so we can be in the hot tub. But yeah, if anybody is interested in that, you come see us, and we would be happy to do it for you.
So good.
Yeah.
Love you.
I love you too.
I'll pray,
Pray,
and then we'll do
we'll
it.
get out of here.